It's time for the Week in Mobile, episode number 13. This is recorded April 17th, 2011. And I am, of course, Rob Woodbridge from Untether.tv, one of your hosts. And with me, as usual, we're going to go in a different order this time. Mr. Jeff Bacon, purveyor of all things mobile, over at BitHeads or Ascension Media. Did I get that right this time?
Ascension Cross Media.
Oh! All right, by episode 26, I swear I'll get that right. Ascension Cross Media. And obviously, everything at the, you can find them at the Suave Hog, bacononthego.com or at Suave Hog on Twitter. Jeff, thanks, man. Episode 13, thanks for doing this.
Good to be here.
And of course, Anthony Risk. He is the curator of all that is children applications at Zeebo.com. And of course, BlackBerry, the author of Beginning BlackBerry Development, and...
Cute,
oh, yeah.
Cute.
Nice.
He was just sitting there. So.
Nice. It just happened to be sitting right there beside him at the time.
Just happens to be, yeah.
Anthony, thanks for doing this. Episode number 13. I can't believe we are here. No. Teen years. We were going to skip this one, weren't we? We're just going to go right into 14 because of good luck. Bad luck. I don't even know what it is anymore. We have narrowed the focus down to three very important stories, and we're going to attack them in depth, obviously, as we go along here. The first one we're gonna tackle here is an incredible story, and it comes from the incredible fairy tale land of Silicon Valley, doesn't it? And I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about a company called Color raising $44 million US for that team. I think it was what it was, and whatever it's going to be. 2 weeks later, we're talking about a company raising $50 million. $50 million, and this company is called Flipboard.
Yeah.
We're not building silicone. We don't have a fab that we have to build. We're not pressing any chips. We're not doing anything that really takes any money other than we're extracting RSS feed A and putting it into beautiful picture B in Flipboard. $50 million. Let the conversation begin. Bacon!
Well, yeah, and that's also following on Rovio's $42 million investment from...
Three companies, $150 million.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy that this is Flipboard getting these $50 million after previously raising $10.5 million, which I guess they don't have anymore since they needed another $50 million. So I'm not quite sure how you building a RSS aggregator application. Granted, it's a little more complex than that, but on the surface, it's a newsreader application. How do you need $50 million to build that? Like you can build a massive company for $50 million, and here you're writing one piece of software that is interfacing with news organizations around the world to give people personalized news. But that shouldn't cost $50 million to do. There shouldn't be any reason why this company needs that much money to move forward. And it's just another example that we've talked about before of this kind of gold rush of companies trying to get in, of investors trying to get in with companies when they're small and trying to get their money in early. Heaven forbid they miss the next overvalued company that blows up into a Twitter or a Facebook valuation, which is completely ridiculous for their valuations, but the investors who got in early are probably thinking they've made it pretty well.
Well, I mean, some of the VCs that are in here are the same guys that invested in Twitter and a bunch of the other social platforms that are poised to do quite well. So win-win-win is what they're thinking right now. But I don't know, Anthony, are you in the same vein as Jeff on this?
Well, so both counts, right? So it's insane to think. So when I saw Flipboard the first time, I thought, well, this is kind of a cool app. There was an about one of the tabs or one of the whatever the categories on Flipboard was sort of a Flipboard. You could see about the team and everything like that. So I clicked on there, and there's a team of 16 people who spent like a year or whatever building this thing, and they got $10 million to build it. It's insane, right? I just couldn't fathom how you could possibly need that. But I think Jeff's right. It's investors invest on value, right? So you think they're thinking that Flipboard is at some point going to be worth significantly more than the $200 million that it's worth now at this valuation, or it's going to be bought for more than that. But I don't see how that's going to. It's a huge risk, I think. Flipboard's got to have a great story behind it. But I really don't know. I don't see how that, you know, it's not the kind of thing that's really hard to compete with, as far as I can tell.
Like, there's two ways. I mean, I'm boiling it down, but basically you can look at a company when you're figuring out how much money to invest in it and think, okay, what's the future value of the revenue this company is going to generate? Or what's this company going to get sold for? Right? Those are the two basic ways to kind of look at it and say, okay, how much money should I invest? Do I think you're going to make enough revenue that it could pay out via dividends or being bought based on its revenue? Or do I think the value of this company is going to be high to somebody else so that they'll pay significantly over what I'm valuing it at now? And so when you look at Flipboard, I'm not quite sure how you can say, okay, we're going to value it at $200 million. Therefore, we think somebody else is going to purchase it for far above $200 million. Or we think the revenue that it can generate will be far above $200 million. And how much revenue has it generated so far?
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, because what they're talking about is monetizing that Flipboard application. Well, let's take a step back. Yeah, the step back I want to take is quite literally what they're going to be using these funds for. So they got $50 million, and they're going to be using the funds for increasing their staff, broadening the product into multiple platforms. I guess they're going to do an iPhone rollout as well. Hopefully, an Android rollout as well, and then broadening the reach internationally, and then bringing in more partners because they signed Oprah and a bunch of other premium brands at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're going to be using this $50 million for. It's not like they're going to be building a school or 10. Because I think you can probably build 10 small schools in rural Africa for that much money. They're not going to be desalinating seawater or ocean water so that people who are not able to find water are going to be drinking. Where they are building out an RSS product that extracts crappy feeds and makes it look pretty like in a nice little magazine. Wow. That's what they're doing. So $50 million, that's what their use of funds are. Am I missing anything with this business? Like, are the three of us missing something? Is it much more significant?
It could be. Like, the thing is, you're looking at it's still the very, very beginning of tablets, right? And if there's 45 million tablets sold this year, and that's like the lowest year, for the next decade. So there's hundreds of millions of tablets out in the hands of people, and Flipboard becomes sort of a premier destination for all those users. So it's kind of like it could be viewed as kind of getting in on the web when people started installing web browsers in their computers, started getting internet access. And that's probably what the investors are thinking, that there's going to have to be, it's a market shift, right? It's a paradigm shift in the market. There's going to be a whole lot of new things created. There's going to be some winners, some losers. And if you're in on the ground floor with a winner, right? So if Flipboard's a big winner, it becomes a name everyone on their tablet has to have Flipboard. It's like the Google of something for tablets. And you're in on the ground floor, that's worth a lot of money. But, that they actually could spend $50 million doing whatever they're going to do. I mean, increasing staff is just kind of a generic thing that you say. I mean, yeah, what are you going to do with this money? We're going to hire a bunch of people. That's what they want to hear. It's, I don't know what they actually can spend the money on. And I'm shocked that they actually spent $10.5 million, if they did so far, doing what they did. I think it's a great product, but I don't think it's, like Jeff said, you can build a gigantic company for that amount of money.
So, go ahead, Jeff.
They haven't monetized it yet.
But let's tie into that. Let's get right into that. Is that what are their options here to generate revenue from this product?
Well, the two basic ones obviously are advertising or subscription or / sale of the product to customers, right?
Yep.
So those are the two basic ones. And let's tackle advertising first. All the content that they're getting in is basically paid for on those sites by advertising. So ultimately, there's going to be competition between Flipboard and those sites for advertising dollars. Now, Flipboard can sign deals with these sites to do a shared revenue model for which those sites are making less money off of people viewing their stories from Flipboard than they are direct from their website.
Right.
The other option is a subscription, and as that's people paying to get news, which they can get for free elsewhere. So I'm pretty sure that model is not going to be successful, that somebody else will just come out with another free app that does the same thing and doesn't charge a subscription, and people will use that.
Yeah, Pulse is out there right now.
That's right. There's I mean, Zeit's out there as well, right?
Yep.
I mean, there'll be lots of them. As soon as one of them, the popular one, starts charging, suddenly there's a huge market for a free news reader app. So I think the advertising model is definitely the one that looks like it's most viable, and signing deals with content providers and doing ad sharing gets the content provider's distribution. But the question is, when they're signing a deal with a content provider, they're doing it because that content provider has valuable content and probably has a brand name behind it, whether it's the New York Times, whether it's
Oprah,
or whether it's USA Today.
or Oprah.
Exactly. No matter who it is, they're going to have some valuable content. At some point, they're going to be looking at how much traffic they're going from Flipboard and thinking, well, how much more valuable would that be if it was direct from our site? If it's a valuable enough partnership for Flipboard to pay them with it, then that brand has a valuable enough brand to launch their own application, and people will go and view it, just like the New York Times did. Yep. It's a valuable enough brand that you can view New York Times through a customized New York Times application on your iPad, on your iPhone, because it's that valuable. So where's the incentive for them to share the revenue with Flipboard? Each time one of these brands gets that successful in Flipboard, it just makes sense for them to say, okay, you know our brand, so it's worth us having our own app, and Flipboard is basically the dregs of the RSS feeds on the net.
So, I mean, it's not an easy thing to monetize somebody else's content. It's not an easy thing, but they've created relationships with some of the biggest news providers like Oprah. You know, you name it, they've got a list now of companies that they've worked with. But those companies look at it as non-threatening because it's a relationship and there's no revenue sharing here and there's no revenue stealing. It's driving content or driving eyeballs to their content. But I would say that Flipboard needs those guys. I don't know what the numbers are in downloads, but you know,
Flipboard. I feel like I got to be the guy to play devil's advocate here, right? Because we can't all be bashing.
No, we're not. We're discussing this.
No, but it's fair. But I think so. I got two theories. One is that they've discovered a way to keep your app up in the rankings, because you hear about venture capitalists spending $50 million on a news reading app, and everyone's going to go and try and download it.
It's great advertising.
Exactly, and you know, cost per acquisition of a user is like 10,000 or something. It's
it's still pretty high.
So not just, you can actually just pay people to download your app and it'd be cheaper. But I think that so there it could be this. It's like apps are a little bit different than anything else, right? So it's you're only going to have, the story could be that you're only going to have a certain number of apps really on your device. Yep. And the app market is very much a top 25 kind of place. So what's the value in having yourself as one of the featured, you know, in having your content featured in an app that's going to be one of the top apps, right? So it could be that like Oprah by herself, difficult to be a top 25 app. A lot of other content providers, a bit difficult to be a top 25 app, just because there are so many of them. But if there's one, if there's Flipboard and they have a plan and they can convince people that they can stay up in the rankings, or that they're already on a bunch of devices and they just have to keep going, then you've got a channel with a lot of viewers, and that's not that easy a thing to achieve. There's some value there. And if it's the top channel on an expanding tablet market, and you're talking like we're the top newsreader app across 100 million tablets, and what's that worth to you? Well, that's actually worth quite a bit. You know, you could produce your own app, sure, for a lot less money than Flipboard's raised to produce their app. They all have the resources to do it. You can hire technology. You could probably contract some of it out to Flipboard if you really wanted to do it that way. But you still don't have the readers. You still don't have that massive audience that Flipboard. That's the only thing that Flipboard could be promising, is that we're going to work to maintain a massive audience. And
there must be statistics. They must have statistics that are very clear that being a featured or highlighted content provider in Flipboard is good for traffic, right? Yeah. So. And they've been doing this for almost since their launch, since the second version of the product came out, where they would have featured content from Boing Boing or whatever it was, or Gizmodo or something. And but do you think that some of this money's got to go towards licensing and appeasing people, right? So eventually they're going to have a Wall Street paid channel, and like we talked about with Zeit before, which was they're going to offer subscriptions and through this product. Through Flipboard. It only makes sense. But I think that if you look at this, could this just be as simple as They've had many offers from Google before. Google sucks at interface. We know that. Their Google Reader is terrible. You know, and they don't have a really comparable product out there on the iPad or even Android devices. Is this just not a way to say, hey, listen, the VCs are going to put $50 million in or $60 million in on a $200 million valuation. Google's going to buy the thing for $350. Everybody's going to walk away pretty clear by the end of this year. That's what's going to happen to this company. Google's going to buy them for $350 million.
Well, I think they've got at least 2 or 3 credible potential acquirers that they've been telling people about. I'm sure.
But deep pockets. So it's either Apple, which makes no sense. It could be RIM, which makes even less sense. But they did buy Gist and a bunch of other things, so maybe that is. But I do believe that Google will buy this company, and they'll pay $350 million. And it will happen this year, because it's the only logical thing. Because they're not building anything, any innovation or a platform. I think they're just jacking up the price.
But if that's the case, if that's really a legitimate option for Google to spend $350 million on it, then Google is stupid, because they should have spent $300 million right now and saved themselves $50 million. Because most VCs are not looking for an ROI of that low. That's actually a ridiculously low return on investment for the VC, right? So if that's the case, then that would mean they expect that to happen really quickly. You're right, because that's the only way that return on investment makes sense. But if that's going to happen that quickly, then the people at Google are just wasting money by not coming in earlier and saying, oh, okay,
well, they did.
Here, we'll just buy you now for this much.
They've made many offers, they say, and Flipboard's rejected each one of them. And probably because
they haven't offered $350 million, and they won't pay $350 million for it.
Well, I'm talking about, I mean, their valuation was not that high when they only had $10 million invested in. Now that they've got the $50 million at a $200 million valuation, that really does set the bar. So you think about what the VCs are interested in a return. All I know is that you put that much money in it, there's a big revenue spike. There's got to be a big revenue spike at some point. There's got to be, and you know, maybe they can be patient. I mean, with $50 million, you've got to think that that's probably 3 years of runway for these guys, and hopefully
for the 50-person team.
Well, they've gone through 10 in a year, right? In theory.
Well, not necessarily.
So, but I think we can both say that we can all say here is that that there's got to be something that we're not seeing in this business model, or there's some kind of alternative to a revenue generator, or they're not really concerned. All they're trying to do is sign deals, get users, become the de facto news reader, RSS reader, or aggregator, and curate the content, and somebody else will pick them up at some point for an ungodly amount of money.
Or they'll figure out a way to make money. That's
I hope so.
Total classic VC.com strategy. You're going to get a bunch of users and figure out a way to make money and work for Google.
Yeah, that's a Twitter strategy. How much money is Twitter making off their users?
Well, Twitter's making in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars right now, simply through syndicated content, through... I mean, they're making money. Twitter's making money. They might not be breaking even. They're making money. At least they have a stream. I mean, by all accounts, they have 200 million users plus. But I think that what they're talking about is a smaller subset who are actually using it on a day-to-day basis. I know I just purged 3,000 followers because they haven't updated it in 6 or 9 months. Any of their posts, and there's a smaller subset, but it's still a very active subset that they can advertise to. That's a value thing, because the content there is actually not owned by you and I. It's owned by Twitter, and they can do what they want. The content on Flipboard is not owned by Flipboard.
So how much is Twitter worth? What's their valuation?
I don't know. More than my house. More than me.
Yeah, like it's ridiculously high, and I think the dollar of revenue per valuation at Twitter right now. Originally, their valuation spiked because it was saying, okay, we have 200 million users, but as time goes on, you realize that there's only a smaller percentage of those that are actively engaged in Twitter, which are actually generating revenue. So the valuation is like way above. So when Flipboard, even if Flipboard quoted how many users they have, is how many downloads they have, that's irrelevant. How many downloads is not relevant. How many installs that are currently active is what's relevant.
Yep.
Very true. They have to have analytics on that, and they've got to be showing that. The investors got to be asking for that. But it's one of those things. It's a classic. So it worked for Google. It worked for Facebook was overvalued at $2 billion, and now it's undervalued at $50 billion a few years later. It's one of those weird things. It's a I think.
Yeah,
But
there's a big difference here, and I think that hopefully this will play out just like Color did, or Color will hopefully be a little bit more than just a phone, like a photo sharing application, a real-time photo sharing app. But there's such a disparity between some of the investment that's going into mobile companies. Scoutmob just closed $1.1 or $1.5 million, and it's a location-based coupon provider. $1.5 million, and these guys are actually generating revenue. And these guys, Flipboard, $0 in revenue and $60 million in total investment. Like back in the heyday of the bubble, in the web bubble, nobody was getting this kind of money except for if you were building chips, right? If you're actually fabricating something, silicone, you got this kind of money because you needed it. This was part of the play. But I don't even think Pets.com got 10 million.
Oh,
maybe they did, but they didn't get 50.
But you know what? But a lot of it comes down to team, because the investors are going to say, look, if we're going to spend a whole bunch of money, you got to have a team that's not going to piss away. Like you can spend $2 million on a team that has no idea what they're doing. Yeah. And people make this argument, spend the $50 million on 25 different companies. But if those are all companies that are valuing themselves at we need a couple $1 million, they're not as experienced. They're not asking for the higher valuations, and chances are they're just going to have no idea what to do with the money that they get, piss it away, and then you've wasted it. But give the money to someone who you think knows what to do with the money.
It's a good team. Well, this will play out. I'm hoping that again we don't come to this point and say these two deals were were the flare before the red flag went up, before this stupid thing kind of implodes, because that kind of money, no matter what you're doing, honestly, invest it in a spaceship, right? Go and explore the moon, contribute to something like that. But an RSS reader, I just want to put it in perspective, right? Is that $50 million? They'd better be inventing a brand new way to bring news and plant it right into my brain through an RSS feed. So, speaking about making money, let's talk about app stores. I want to switch subjects because we could spend a lot of time, I think, on Flipboard. I love the product, but I use Zeit more now than I use Flipboard. It just shows how easy it is to switch, right? There's no loyalty here. So let's talk about app stores, talking about no loyalty. And first off, Bacon, thanks to you, I've been playing Gun Brothers all weekend. I've had no productivity. Way better on the iPad than on the iPhone, by the way. I'm much better at it. And my thumbs, I'm actually getting like... there's wear and tear on my iPad, and my thumbs are getting like Nintendo thumb for the iPad.
They get hot, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do. So, app stores. Jeff, you wrote a really great article about, first of all, Ovi, which is the Nokia App Store, basically, is doing 5 million downloads a day, and that's not bad for a dead product, right? And the second part of this is that you wrote an article that went against, actually that said the Amazon store is a good thing. Because who was it? The International Association for Game Developers came out with an article saying, here are some warnings about the Amazon Android App Store. Why don't we talk about that? What were the warnings that they gave?
Yeah, so the IGDA, which is a Game Developers Association that represents the interests of game developers around the world, and it's generally... It's called the Independent Game Developers Association, so they do have companies that help sponsor them, but it is people in the games industry that are members of it. So if you work in the games industry, you can be a member. And they are an industry organization, so like many industry organizations, they watch out for their members and the potential pitfalls that can happen with them. So they looked at the Amazon Android App Store terms and conditions for developing, submitting applications, and they had some concerns about them. And they brought up 5 scenarios, which I'll briefly run through, that they thought were particularly worrisome that could happen based on the terms, and then they came up with 2 conclusions. So the 5 scenarios were, 1, that Amazon could steeply discount a large chunk of its App Store catalog. For example, our top 100 games are all 75% off. And they said that some developers could win, but many developers likely near the bottom will actually lose revenue. And they don't actually have to tell you when they're going to do that, because they have permission to change the price of your application for promotions without permission from you. The second was that you are required to guarantee Amazon a minimum list price that matches the lowest price in any other market. So basically, they've said that if you list your product elsewhere at a lower price, you have to list it on Amazon's App Store at that lower price. And unfortunately, they also note that if it's listed anywhere else at any time, then you also have to list at that price on Amazon, which provides some difficulties in providing a product for free for a period of time on another store, because Amazon would then say that you have to give that same preferred pricing to Amazon. The third one was that other digital markets that compete with Amazon may feel compelled to duplicate those terms. So they feel that if Amazon's terms are accepted by developers, that somebody else could come up with a market and decide that those are good terms to use, or have even more severe terms. And it's like like where do you draw the line kind of an issue. Fourth one is that Amazon could steeply discount or make free a game that has a well-defined niche audience. So in theory, a game that does well with a niche audience, suddenly they make it for free. The niche audience goes all and gets it for free, robbing the developer of all the revenue they're going to make, or a vast majority of it. And the final one that was a potential worrisome scenario was that Amazon could steeply discount a hit game at a time when the game is already selling well. And in theory, that could cause net harm to the developer. So those are the 5 scenarios based on the terms and conditions, which are obviously the terms and conditions are ridiculously long. We talked about user agreements and being nobody reading them last week, but they came up with 2 conclusions, or 2 things that they think are particularly, I guess they're just basically recommendations or conclusions. 1, a developer permission should be required by any retailer seeking to pay less than the standard percentage of a developer's minimum list price. And number 2, developers should have the freedom to set a minimum list price of whatever amount they see fit without regard to pricing in other app stores. So basically what they're worried about is the store having undue price control without developers being as involved in controlling what their product is sold for on a particular channel. And I looked at that and I said, yeah, there's definitely, if you go letter of the law and Big Brother scenario, Amazon could enforce the terms and cause harm to developers. But ultimately, the problem is that you have to look at a store as what is the goal for that store. And the goal for Amazon is to sell content, is to drive revenue. They don't make money off of anything but the software sales.
Yep.
It's not like RIM, who makes money off devices. It's not like Apple, who makes all their money off of hardware. It's not like Google, who makes all their money off of advertising. If Amazon doesn't have a successful store that sells product for profit, not for free, then they're not going to make any money off of it. So I kind of looked at it and said, well, I think it's a little bit of fear-mongering by the IGDA, which unions and organizations tend to do to try and push on the far right or the far left of an issue to make their point, but that ultimately competition on the Android platform for app stores can only be good for developers.
Well, it's interesting to me because controlling price in their stores is a dicey situation for me. I don't mind that they discount the product or compensate you at a minimum amount if they're going to discount it for free, if they're going to run a promotion. But the one thing that I tend to agree with the IGDA is that you have to be able to set your price, because it should be, or it can, or you should be allowed to differ from the App Store versus the BlackBerry, app world, and Android's marketplace and Amazon's marketplace, because they all serve different purposes, right? They're all different things. Like, so for example, if you price it for 99 cents on App Store, it's because of a volume play that you want to get to, and it's a different market. If you price it at $1.99 or $2.99 on App World, there's a reason for that, because development costs on the BlackBerry are slightly it's more expensive. And then if you want to charge $1.99 or 99 cents or whatever, $1.50 on Amazon, you should be able to do that, because you're talking about 3 different types of marketplace. 2 with volume, 1 because a little bit, it could be a little bit more expensive to develop on. I don't think that you can penalize a developer by saying, listen, there's one price for your product across all of this, because so much goes into the development on different platforms that it just doesn't make sense to charge the same, I would say. I don't know.
But they're talking like Android apps, right? So I mean, if I develop a BlackBerry app,
no, it's any store. So that's what they're saying.
No, but I mean, I'll build like BabyGo for BlackBerry, BabyGo for Android. They're different products.
Yeah.
Boom, right? So we're good.
That's right.
And that's the way it'll work. Like the Android version of when PlayBook supports Android apps, that's sort of a different thing. I don't know how exactly that'll play out, because I don't know if that counts as the same product or whatever. But I could certainly list, or if I really wanted to, I mean, really Baby Go for. See, I'm plugging Zeeboo's product here. Zeeboo Baby Go, the leading kids app on BlackBerry. For I could do if I really wanted to get around it. I mean, sure, I could do Baby Go Android, the Amazon edition, and Baby Go Android, the Google
like
Market.
the
I really want to
marketplace.
see it,
But that's exactly right, and that's why Amazon has put their terms intentionally broad. But the reality is, there's easy ways of just saying it's a different product in a different store, and that immediately solves the issue right there of your pricing problem. But ultimately, I mean, I agree generally that there should be some developer control over the pricing of the product. But if you look at it like an MSRP, in which it's a suggested retail price from the manufacturer, then yeah, the developer should say what the MSRP is, but it's not uncommon to have preferred partner or tier 1 deals amongst distribution locations in which they say, okay, I'll distribute your product, but I'm not going to go sell it for $5 and give you a promotional place on it if you're selling it for 99 cents somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because that makes my store look bad. So I don't think it's a problem that a store is saying, look, if you're going to sell the same product somewhere else, you got to give me the same price that you're selling it somewhere else so I can be competitive. Otherwise, in theory, developers could all price their stuff $2 higher on Amazon, and there's no way Amazon could compete.
Yeah, it's a unique spot. It's a very unique spot because Amazon is competing with the mothership app store, right? So you're not going to see this instance anywhere else. Nobody has created, well, maybe they have, but I mean, Bplay and App World, I think, are the two closest things that you've got here. Is that you've got a store that's targeting BlackBerry users, but there isn't going to be another App World. Amazon's not going to open up another BlackBerry app store that we know of. Maybe they will, but you're competing with a mothership, and I think this is unique, a unique situation. And sure, they have to protect the up and the down, but as a developer, you always have the choice, and that's the key: is that you can choose not to be a part of Amazon's store, and you can forego that. So if you don't agree with it, don't do it. It's that clear.
Exactly.
And the IGGA made a kind of reference in that, in theory, they're worried about Amazon in their worst case scenario becoming the Walmart of Android apps. And I say, well, you know, Target and Walmart are both in the States. And if you don't like Walmart's policies and you like Target's, you can choose not to have your product in Walmart. But everybody knows that that's a bad business decision, that you need to have your product as many stores as possible, and each of those stores that have clout are going to hammer you on price to try and get the lowest price. But distribution and availability of your product is the #1 thing. Half or more than half, I think it was like 75% of the top grossing games on Apple were free products. There was no cost to download it. It was all in-app purchasing. So the market really has a lot of flexibility in terms of what to support, how to support. And for every developer, getting your app distributed and getting it in front of people's eyeballs is the most important thing. And if Amazon has 10 feature slots and Android Market has 10 feature slots, that's twice as many featured slots that you could be in this week, and gives much more flexibility to developers.
You know, what's great is that, as I said, I led this off by saying I've been playing Gun Brothers the whole day, this whole weekend, and it's a free app. And the way they make their money is in-app purchasing, right? And where you go and buy virtual goods or virtual cash or all that kind of stuff. So just do that. Just make it a free application, and you have no problems. And leverage the in-app side, because all of these operating systems now contain it. So, I mean, it's good. So go to bacononthego.com. You'll see the article. It references the IADG article as well, so you'll be able to get a good sense of what that is. And
great article.
Valid article. It's a valid point, and again, I mean, you could always just sell it yourself and do all the marketing independently, right?
So I mean, as an app developer, you know, Android apps we're going to be on Amazon, we're going to be on the market.
Yep. Oh, you have to. I think that, as Jeff said, if you're in the business of limiting your income potential, then just sell from your own website. If not, be a part of the ecosystem.
I think you can make an idealistic stance, right? There's people who will not sell the products in Walmart, even if Walmart came knocking on their door.
Yeah.
But those are the they're doing it for a different reason, right? Yeah. You've got an idealistic vision. You don't want to deal with Walmart. That's fine. But someone's going to come along and squash you, because they are. And the one other thing I thought of is these policies are only really going to affect the top apps. And those are the guys who understand it anyway. Yeah. Like, if I'm selling 100 copies, you know, a year on the Amazon Marketplace, they're not going to touch my pricing because they don't care about me.
Yeah,
They don't have someone going through saying, well, this guy at number 9,244 on the chart, we got to drop his price 33%. Just
policing is going to be very difficult on this, I think.
Yeah. But and again, it's the chicken. It's kind of like a catch-22 in that it only affects the top-selling apps. But if you're a top-selling app, these are some of the ways in which you became a top-selling app by participating in promotions and featured slots.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can say, no, I don't want to be in those features and those promotions, but that's going to lock you out of becoming a top app, except for the few applications that have existing user bases on other platforms that they're bringing over.
That's it.
Totally agree.
And the thing is, and they've got the power too, because like if Amazon starts screwing Rovio around, they're going to say, well, we're not going to list Angry Birds on the Amazon App Store anymore.
Yeah.
How do you like that?
When we ran Bplay and had 9 of the top 10 mobile game publishers in the world selling content on Bplay with us for BlackBerry content, we change prices all the time with stuff. We talk to them sometimes, but getting through to 9 partners and 10 partners alone to get approval on changing a product price and getting a newsletter approved by the 7 different people whose logos are in there, like, it's ridiculous. Now, if you have thousands of developers there, it's just a case where there's no way Amazon can say, okay, I need to get all those approvals, because people are just not going to reply to their email. They're going to be out that week, they're that day, and it's not feasible for the storefront to be run that
and
way.
Amazon doesn't want to screw around developers. Like, they're not going to say screw you, EA. I mean,
that's right.
Come on, right? This is they've got more power, but they're not going to do it because they don't want to alienate the developers, because they need them as much as the developers need Amazon.
Well, it's good fodder. I think that they're all fighting over some valuable things, and as you said, Jeff, Amazon, this is a revenue generator for them. It might be a loss leader, but ultimately anything that drives to the store on Amazon.com or any of their localized stores is good for them. It just means that they're doing it with MP3s and music downloads and video downloads, and they're going to do it with games and. They're streaming now. They're taking on everybody, and this is a very aggressive Amazon, which is cool to see. I like to see this, normalizing the industry. So let's speak about aggressiveness. This is a big week for RIM. This is
huge week.
This is a big week for RIM. The PlayBook launches on Tuesday. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, it launched yesterday. If you're listening to it on Monday, it launched tomorrow. If you're listening to it on Tuesday, go buy one. This is a big week for RIM, and it's the response, the reviews that we've seen range from lukewarm to frosty, I would say. Walt Mossberg basically is the frostiest of the frost, basically saying that that this is a unfinished, unpolished, rushed, whatever you want to call it. He's not happy with it, but you expect that from a guy who loves Apple as much as he does. And then you've got a guy like Malik, whose review of this was very realistic. He said, man, the browsing experience on this device is like you're at the desktop. It's a beautiful browsing experience. The multitasking is stellar. The operating system is okay. The UI is great. But I can't live without native email. I can't live without native contacts, and I can't live without native calendar. But we all know that's going to come. But he was I think the most open-minded when it came to this device, but tepid to say the least. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of what we expected. What do you guys think is going to happen this week?
Man,
like they haven't done any pre-announcements about the numbers that they've got or what they've sold.
They weren't going to. Because you don't only do that if you're the leader, and Apple's always going to be the leader for the future. I don't know. I think that a lot of the reviewers, so a lot of RIM's initial target is BlackBerry users, and they've got a solution for BlackBerry users to access their email and their calendar. I don't know how well it works. I haven't really seen it. I haven't played with that part of it. But if most of the people buying these are corporate BlackBerry users to start with, it's not a big issue, because in fact, it's a benefit that you have to use your BlackBerry email and calendar, because it's an easy setup.
Secure, it's everything. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's going to. People are going to like it more than the reviews tend to claim, but whether it's going to be successful in the market, I have no idea. It's just a complete. I like to think it will, We've got a couple of good apps on PlayBook, and I like to think we're going to sell a lot, but I just have no idea.
But add to that Mike Lazaridis, and what I would consider the only thing is like he's having a bad day, but it's like he's having a bad couple of weeks here. That poor guy. He gets basically does a no comment, shuts down a BBC interview because they're talking about the security issues in India. And as I heard many times this week, he's got to have just the stat answer for that, because this is what's happening there. Move on, right?
Well,
but he shut it down.
The reason he shut the interview down wasn't because they asked about the problems in India. It's because the reviewer basically said, how are you going to deal with the fact that security is a problem on BlackBerry because no one can decrypt the emails? And he's like, are you kidding me? You're coming here and asking me a question about security being the problem for BlackBerry when by far it's not the problem? Well, okay, let me rephrase that. For corporate and government and military customers and banking, it's not the problem. For consumers, it's a benefit, except that it does impair the user experience a little bit when you're using the device. Yep. But ultimately, it's like what the business of RIM has been built on is security. So I don't think he handled it the right way, but it's the case of RIM being continuously frustrated when people don't get their viewpoint of why security is so important. And everybody says, why can't you make it a better user experience? Why can't you do this? Yep. And RIM is always saying, well, because we need to make it secure. Yeah, but Jeff, not really doing a good job of explaining what that means to the average person.
That's the big challenge that they've got here, right? Is the fact that the average person that they're trying to target is a mix. I'm confused about who the PlayBook is after. Why am I able to buy this in Best Buy and Radio Shack or Walmart when it's geared towards not the consumer, right? So on one hand, they're saying, why don't you get a consumer? And then on the other hand, they're saying, don't worry, it's good for the enterprise. And the average consumer doesn't care about security, I would say, as much as the enterprise does. So for him to get frustrated with that is just pardon me, it's bullshit, and it's his fault. It's his company's fault.
Wow.
They've done a poor job of actually working this through with the average consumer.
They needed stronger messaging. The whole India thing to begin with. I mean, the issue with India was that the BlackBerry was too secure. Yeah. That India was complaining because they couldn't read email on BlackBerry, unlike every other
Same thing
device.
Saudi Arabia, right? Exactly the same thing.
He should have ripped the guy's head off. He should have said, look, you're an idiot. The problem with India was that we were too secure for them, and they wanted to break into people's email, and BlackBerry didn't let them. That was the issue. That's their message. That should be their message. That should have been their message the whole time. India, they want to spy on your email, and our stuff is too good. That should have been their message. So
that's the challenge.
But the point, so I don't know. The PlayBook, though, you're right, though, that it's a split personality, and I think it's because it was rushed. I think so everything about it is rushed. The lack of native email and calendar, the lack of a really strong marketing message around it one way or the other. It's because they had to get it out because Apple has 2 generations of tablets out now.
And there's a bunch of other devices coming out.
And a bunch of other devices are coming. And, HP is going to come out with their tablets. Yeah, there hasn't been a successful Android tablet yet.
Nope.
But there will be.
On one hand, I want to say, I kind of agree with a lot of the reviews that are a little bit frosty in that I do find there's some things about it, like not having native email and calendar, that kind of turn me off a bit from it, and that's partly because I have a BlackBerry and an iPhone, but my primary device right now that I'm using for my personal stuff is my iPhone, and my work stuff is on my BlackBerry. And I don't really want to have the BlackBerry Bridge on me because I don't always carry my BlackBerry around because it's mostly for work things. But that, I got to say, I'm kind of impressed by the fact that what they've created, they've done in like 12 months.
Yeah.
I mean, RIM's innovation time, RIM's time to actually develop and ship a device in the past has traditionally been so long that by the time they ship a device, it's not ahead of the curve anymore. So the fact that they've been able to produce this device in a year says to me, A, maybe they finally learned their lesson and they need to build devices not in a 3-year time frame when by the time they build it, everybody else has the same thing, but they need to build them to come out a year later and ship the freaking device.
Yeah.
So I gotta give them props for saying, okay, you know what? We have to get this out the door. We need a device in the market. You know what? Doesn't have 100% of everything we would want on it to ship it, but you know what? It's good enough to get it out the door. It's going to appeal to our corporate customers right now, and we'll make it appeal to the consumers later on. And have to hope that in the time between it launches and it having all those features, the perception of the playbook in the consumer market hasn't degraded to the point, and there's already the misconceptions about the playbook out there are astounding. Like, I got so many people that are saying, but you can't get on the internet with it and, without having a BlackBerry. Yeah. I'm saying, well, no, you can't get email and calendar, but you can still bridge to a Bluetooth device that supports the dial-up networking protocol and get on the internet. But most people think you have to have BlackBerry Bridge in order to even get on the internet with it, unless you're in Wi-Fi coverage. Yeah. So RIM is doing a very, very poor job, which is not uncommon for them in the past, of communicating some of the things they think are benefits, like the BlackBerry Bridge. They overplay it so much because it's a benefit to businesses, that it becomes a negative to consumers because the perception is so wrong. It's just like the security issue. RIM missed a golden opportunity with India and with Saudi Arabia to come out with the completely non-politically correct stance and say, the problem is these countries want to break into your email, and the only device they cannot break into your email on is the BlackBerry. On every other device, they can read your email without asking you. On BlackBerry, they can't, and that's the problem. If they'd stood up and said that, there would have been so much news on all the other manufacturers saying, oh, really? All these countries can read all your email without you knowing on an iPhone? But they didn't do that. They took the politically correct stance, and so it became a perception issue amongst consumers that security is a problem.
Totally. That's what bugged. I think that's what probably was bugging. It's amazing how bad their messaging is. I think you're right, Jeff. It's totally that. But I think Playbook does stand a really good chance. So I think that I don't actually know how well it's going to do because of the negative perception. But I think RIM, just from the tablet point of view, they've got to be aiming for. They're going to be aiming for number 2. I think they got a good chance of being the number 2 tablet, right? And a strong number 2, because there's not a lot of other. From what I've seen of Playbook and other tablets, the Playbook looks way better than everything except for the iPad, and that's not bad. That's not bad at all, because this sets them up really, really well for the future. And the fact if they can solidify a good spot in the tablet market, in a market that Apple basically owns because it defined the market, it created the market, that's not a bad place for them to be. And I think that they can do that, but they have to get their messaging together. They really do. It's just no one is even people have barely heard of Playbook in some cases.
What they hear is their CEO whining about why they don't get any respect. Yeah. Like, what I don't know what PR firm they're working with, or what media savvy people they're working with.
They have to.
But honestly, shut him up, put him in his corner, let him develop the technology, get somebody out there, and Balsilli's no better. Get somebody out there who is actually in front of this, not complaining that, well, we turned $1 billion, why don't we get the respect? Stop complaining, man. Get the product out. Focus on the things like we've talked about here. Focus on the things that are a benefit, not about RIM, not about respect. It's the old adage is that everybody's underpaid and overworked, right? That's what I hear from these guys, is they're like, well, we did $1 billion. Why don't we get the respect? Respect is in the products that you release. Respect is in the distribution and the messaging that you're using. Stop complaining. Start producing.
And the more I think about it, Jeff, so Jeff is right. Totally about, I'm 100% on board. Like the India, they missed a golden opportunity, right?
Yep. But but you guys, you had to know that the agreement that they signed with India and Saudi Arabia is that they won't say that. So there's no way on earth that RIM is going to come out and say, you know what, they wanted to read your email. They won't say that. They're not allowed to.
But what if they just said, you know what? Screw the India and Saudi Arabia market. We'll take the rest of the world.
Wow.
There's two markets. I know India's big, but Saudi Arabia isn't.
No.
So come out against Saudi Arabia then and say this is the problem. You know what? It's not politically correct. They got the rest of the world that they could win over. 5%.
There's other ways to do it.
The rest of the world is
and you know what?
Those.
And then they'd have to come on board anyway. So people in Saudi Arabia and India are going to start saying, well, so wait, you want to spy on our email, and you want RIM to let you spy on our email? And anyway, there's so many problems, but
there's other ways to get this done, right? So all you have to do is have somebody who's expendable say something to a blogger, and they've done this before, right? Without an official statement from RIM. They've just handled it improperly. And back to the playbook is that I don't understand what this product is, and that's the biggest thing that I have, is that it's not a consumer-driven product. If you told me that they were going after their 60 million BlackBerry users at an enterprise level, and that they were offering it at that level, this makes absolute sense. Then the number of apps don't matter. The fact that they don't have native calendar and mail and contacts doesn't matter. The fact that it hooks up to a BlackBerry matters exceptionally. It's an exceptional value, and it's easy to target. But they just... Paul Dumais, who we all know quite well, once said to me that instead of calling it BlackBerry and just having two splintered products, one consumer, one enterprise, and having the same product there, is that call one BlackBerry and the other one Raspberry. BlackBerry is your enterprise line. Raspberry is your consumer line. Make separate products. Don't use the biz. Don't use the bez. Go down that route so that it's very clear. They should do that.
Because that's the thing. Because RIM is a split personality company in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the co-CEO thing might be a part of it, but because they do, so they sell to, it's the serious people, it's the lawyers, the CEOs, and finance people who love their BlackBerries and they're tethered to them.
Yeah.
But then it's also the sort of the teenagers, the people who want to do texting, want to do BBM, that love the BlackBerries, and they're very different groups.
Yep.
That's kind of the problem, right? And it's hard to and if you end up splitting the middle between those two groups, you're nowhere, right? You can't do both.
But you can't satisfy a 14-year-old and a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
With the same product and the same concerns and the same issues around security. One doesn't care as much. They may learn to care. And the other one, it's essential. And you cannot just offer the same products to the same people and expect it to work. So, but this isn't, we're never going to solve this.
We're solving RIM's marketing problem.
We have hope. I think that's what it is. We have hope. But I think that instead of co-CEOs of Jim and Mike, I think we should have tri-CEOs between Bacon. And I think that, Jeff, you should run it. You can run the technology, and Risk, you can run the software side, and I'll just be the curmudgeon. The tri-CEO right here, the triumvirate. We're going to take over that company. There's a great article that Jeff, that you brought to us, which was in the Globe and Mail. If you go to globemail.com, Omar El Akkad wrote an article about this whole thing, and I thought it was just so good, and so I suggest everyone get a link and it'll be in the show notes here. But if you're just listening to this, go to Globe and Mail and look up Akkad, AKKAD, and he talks to Mike Lazaridis, and he does a great job of kind of summarizing this whole debacle, which is the PlayBook release. But I mean, a year, good for them. Let's see what the next year brings, and I think it'll be good. I don't think it's number 2, Anthony. You know what?
I think it's got a good shot.
Number 2.
There's no strong number 2 right now. I think it's got a good shot.
Yeah, and I think top 5 for me, like you just think about it, it's going to be all the big hardware manufacturers. It's going to be Apple. It's going to be HP. It's going to be HTC. It's going to be RIM. Right? What else is there?
Maybe it's number 3 if you count iPad and iPad 2 separate devices. But yeah. I think it's got a good shot.
Yeah, I definitely think it has a good shot to be number 3. Number 2. Sorry.
It's and this is what's so great about here is it's all speculation. We'll find out what happens on Tuesday, and we'll definitely report back as to hopefully they'll release numbers in the first week. We'll get an idea, see if anybody's camping out overnight to get it at one of the stores. But I don't know if that's going to happen. You can always hope, and I wish RIM all the best. And this is a big week for them. I don't think it's. Even if the PlayBook doesn't do well, I don't think that this is the end of it. They got enough cash in the bank to be able to weather this. I just think that it's so. I mean, it's so important for many other reasons about whether or not they can compete in this innovative world in the mobile space. That's it. Got nothing left.
All right.
I'm all spoken out. That's it.
That's a first.
I know.
I know. You'll never hear me say that.
No. Head over to zebu.com. Where else? What's your BlackBerry blog?
It's thinkingblackberry.com. It's a little bit quiet right now, but it's a good source for BlackBerry, classic BlackBerry development.
Classic BlackBerry development. I love it. Well, all we're trying to do is inspire some more activity on it. So if you get enough activity from people coming to it, you got to start writing for it again.
Yeah,
Anthony.
This is true. I still get lots of comments. I gotta
That's right. It's like, where's the next article?
Yeah, that's it.
And bacononthego.com, at the Suave Hog on Twitter. I should say it at Rizik, which is exactly how you spell it, ARIZK, Twitter. Suave, at the Suave Hog, and bacononthego.com for Jeff, and Ascension Cross Media, or bitheads.com. And of course, you can find me where you found this podcast, hopefully, or in theory, at untether.tv or at robwoodbridge.com. Episode number 13, guys. Thank you so much. And for those who are still watching or still listening, you know we appreciate it. More than we can say. If you've got any feedback, hit untether@gmail.com or any of their email addresses. It'll all come back. And we really appreciate you guys watching or listening wherever you may be. We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye.